Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We're going to give some folks a chance to get on the call. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Exym's March webinar, Data Security. Not fun, but mission critical. This is part of our webinar series that we have started, and we're really excited that you guys are here to be with us today. My name is Michelle Berard, and I am going to be facilitating the webinar. That means that any questions you have or anything you can direct toward me, and I will be helping out. I'm going to do a quick housekeeping information session for us here. This webinar is going to be about 30 minutes, and we just want to keep it tight if we can. That's going to probably be about 20 minutes of presentation, leaving room for questions and answers. I would love it if you all would use the Q&A box, the question and answer box, and that way we'll be able to keep track of all the questions that are being asked in the session, and we will be able to answer them at the end. We are recording this session, and we will be glad to provide a link to that recording in our follow-up. So make sure you keep your eyes open for that. If anyone got onto this webinar without being signed up for our newsletter, like maybe someone forwarded you our newsletter, please, in the chat, make sure that you select my name, Michelle Berard, and let me know, give me your name, your organization, and your email address, and I'll be glad to add you so you can get invited to future events. So I'm going to start by introducing our speaker today. Our speaker is Ben Levenson. He is our DevOps lead at Exym. He is our go-to guy for all things tech, and he's also just an all-around great guy, dad to some of the cutest kids you ever want to see. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Ben.
Thanks, Michelle, and welcome everyone. A little bit of background about me. I have been working in computers since I was a little kid. I learned to type before I could write. My grandfather taught punch card computing at University of Colorado. My father owned a repair and sales company back in the 90s when that was still a thing you could do locally. So I've just been around computers since forever and worked in healthcare, military, federal government, local government, banking. If there's a thing that you can do with computers, I've probably done it at some point. So this presentation is sort of a distillation of just some basics around security, particularly as it relates to small and medium businesses. And then we'll get in at the end a bit into how that impacts your EHR and some questions that you should be asking your provider to make sure that you're getting the most secure products that you can. So like I said, why it matters, what you can do, and then questions for your EHR. So let's just dive right in. What is cybersecurity? So cybersecurity is the general body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect your networks, your devices, your people, your data. Anything that you're using around a computer falls under the realm of cybersecurity, and things not related necessarily to computers, like your phone systems. I mean, all of that now is computer based. So it's a little bit broader than it was back 20 years ago. When we're talking about cybersecurity, you're going to hear from cybersecurity experts this acronym CIA. Not talking about the federal government. This is confidentiality, availability, and integrity. And these are the three pillars that cybersecurity experts focus on. So confidentiality is we only want to give data to the people who are authorized to see it, internally or externally. You know, not everyone in the company needs to see everyone's HR files. Not everyone in the company needs to see financial data. and certainly around healthcare, obviously the need to know there is even bigger. So only allowing people who are authorized to see data is confidentiality. Integrity is that the data is correct, that someone hasn't gone in and modified it, that it reflects the latest and most correct version of that data. If medications have changed, that they're up to date. So integrity is really important, so that a person looking at that data knows, yes, absolutely, I know that this is the right version of it, and I don't have to go question whether or not something got changed. And then availability is that when a user goes and tries to access it, that they can. All of our data would be very secure if we put it in a locked room and no one could get in there, but it's not particularly helpful in getting things done. So availability is one of the key pieces of cybersecurity, because it's great that it's correct and that no one else can access it, but if the authorized person can't, then it's no good to any of us. So why this matters to you and why you should care about it. 35% of small businesses last year reported being the victim of a cybercrime. And the average cost for them was about $5,000. I will tell you that most of these small businesses have 1 or 2 employees. And so the cost for someone a little bit bigger will be quite a bit more. Also, most of these companies weren't necessarily healthcare companies. This is a self-reporting from the National Small Business Association. So by the time you add HIPAA penalty and stuff, that can add up really fast. The average cost of per record for a data breach. So if you have a data breach and you lose 1,000 records, the per cost is $175 on average. So obviously times that by 1,000, that's going to start impacting the bottom line pretty quick. So a little bit of time and money invested in this can end up saving you a lot in the long run. So a little bit more about why it matters. You have specific things required for you by HIPAA. The security rule in the security management process requires that all covered entities and business associates conduct accurate and thorough risk analysis of potential risk and vulnerabilities for the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all EPHI the entities create, receive, maintain, or transmit. So that's the official government wording, but the basis there is, if you have protected healthcare data, you are responsible for keeping it safe, relevant of what else is going on. If someone else loses it, if you share it with someone, if an employee walks off with it, anything like that, it's your responsibility. So the penalties for this can be quite high depending on how good your security practices are. They can be as little as $100 per record or as much as $50,000. And it's a tiered system that's based on how your security practices are set up. So if you're doing everything right and you are doing the utmost you can to protect it, the penalty is going to be much lower than it will be if you're kind of like, well, it's probably not going to happen to us, so we're not going to do anything about it. The government will come down pretty hard on violations like that, based on the perceived level of negligence is the official term. So how can you protect your business? Protecting your business really falls into 3 categories: people, process, and technology. And I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on the technology piece. I would argue that that's probably the least important of all of these pieces. People and processes are what protect data. Technology sits underneath that, and there are some baselines that are important, but the people and the process are really the area of focus, and I think sometimes the areas that get ignored the most. So let's talk about each of those in a little bit more detail. With people, all of you have done your annual HIPAA awareness training. That's really important, and I encourage I encourage you to consider doing that more than once a year, not necessarily the boring presentation that you are legally obligated to see, but do something individual. Set up a challenge for your employees to see who can catch the most phishing emails. I guarantee that they're getting them, and hopefully your spam filters are catching those, but they do come through, and that can be a fun way for for people to get engaged in the security process and really be thinking about their email. You can set up campaigns, or just wait for real ones to come through. I like to walk around the office. Well, back when we were in the office, I like to walk around the office and find people's computers were unlocked and they weren't there, and draw a funny picture in Paint and then lock their computer for them. So when they came back, it stuck in their mind, hey, I really need to be locking my computer when I'm away. Those sorts of awareness exercises make a big difference and can help make everyone feel like they're more involved in the process of securing your information. Background checks, probably all doing this anyway, but it's worth mentioning. HIPAA requires that we do background checks on anyone that's going to access data. So if you haven't done those for your employees, you might want to do that. Also, if you've had an employee for a long time and you haven't done one in a while, generally speaking, we recommend every 3 to 5 years that you redo those on everyone. Not because you don't know your employees and you don't trust them, but again, this when you can hold this up after a breach and say, look, we're doing the utmost that we can, it's going to really reduce penalties and pain. And that includes for external resources. I think this one gets missed a lot. If you have contractors coming in to work on your network, to help you set up a new website, anything like that, you need to sign a BAA with them, and you really need to do background checks for those people too. That's an easily missed one, and I think very important. So around processes, there's kind of two big categories here. There's a lot of process that goes into security, but the two that I really want you to focus on are your business continuity plan and your security planning lifecycle. So with your business continuity plan, some of you who have been around IT may be familiar with disaster recovery plans, and those have kind of fallen out of favor because they address a really small piece of what your business needs in order to work through adverse effects. Whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's a global pandemic, that's just really one small piece. Again, that's a really heavy focus on the technology piece and not the people and process. Whereas business continuity plan really covers what does my business need to continue? Well, you need some technology, but you need a place for people to work. You need people to be able to access the documents that tell them what we're doing at any given time. And so a business continuity plan covers all of that. And some of the key parts of this are, what is it going to take for my company to continue? Make a list, literally just write down all the things that you need in order to, at a very base level, keep the doors open, keep serving customers. And then for each of those things, it's great. So how do we deal with that? If the power goes out, well, can we keep serving, or are we going to say, no, we're going to wait until the power comes back on? If we can't go into the office because the government's shut down all in-person businesses everywhere, what do we need in order to keep serving patients? And so these are the sorts of things that you want to have in your business continuity plan. Specifically on the IT side, on the technology side, around cyber attacks, you also want to consider what you do in a data breach. Have a written plan on how to respond. It's called an incident response plan and is often part of your business continuity plan. Have phone numbers of the state and federal regulators that you have to notify so that you don't have to go figure that out. Have a flow chart that says, hey, when someone reports something that might be a data breach, we're going to go look at it and we're going to notify these people, and we're going to get together and we're going to make a decision about whether it was or wasn't a data breach. And then, depending on the severity of it, we're going to take these steps or these steps, that sort of thing. That's really helpful when you're in that emergency situation, have those steps written out in really plain declarative language, because you don't have to get, you're going to be upset and flustered, and so you don't have to worry about what should we do next. It's there written out for you, and you can use that for really minor problems or really big problems, and a good plan will be able to handle both of those basically through the same process. And then planning life cycle. So this kind of goes hand in hand with your business continuity plan, because it's something that has to be updated pretty regularly. So your planning life cycle consists of analysis, design, implementation, testing, and maintenance. And the reason that icon is a circle is that this is a never-ending process. It's something that's always going on and always has to be updated. So start off with that analysis step, again, specifically referring to your business continuity plan. What does my company need? Solution design for each of those. What are the things that we can do to provide that level of service necessary in order to continue? Implementation is you may discover that you're missing something. Hey, you know what? We don't have an online chat feature. So if we can't be in the office, we don't have a way to talk to each other. Well, you can go provision that. We need a list of everyone's cell phones. We don't actually have a single list somewhere that everyone can access. That's an important thing. And so, go create that. And then testing, actually run a disaster one day, say, hey, great. So we lost this, and how are we going to respond to it? And you don't necessarily need to involve the whole company. Pull in a few key people, block off a couple hours, and just say, hey, how would we respond to this? And make sure that people are looking at the plan and saying, yeah, we can do this, and here's how it would, and here's how it would work. And either they're actually doing it, or at least simulating doing it. And then maintenance, go back through that analysis, make sure that things haven't changed, that there's not some new regulation that requires you to do something different, that you haven't tripled in size, and hence the way you were going to handle something before isn't going to work anymore. And then backups. I include backups as part of process, because I think, although it is a technology thing, backups are part of that business continuity. It's really important to maintain offsite backups for all of your data. That's your documents, your databases, your software, stuff you run in the cloud. If you're hosting it in the cloud, if you're paying someone else to host and it's a SaaS product, then that's their responsibility through your BAA. But if you're hosting your own stuff in the cloud, that requires backups too, because those servers can get corrupt, they can crash. You really want to keep a backup of everything somewhere else, so that if there's a natural disaster, that data is still available. If there's ransomware and everything gets encrypted and you don't have access to it, that data is somewhere. It's really, really important to keep some level of copy of everything that you have offsite. And again, offsite to include the cloud. And then the technology piece. So there's a lot of stuff in technology, and I'm going to focus on two that I think can make the biggest impact for the least level of effort for your company. And that is identity provider and MFA. And these kind of go hand in hand. So an identity provider is a way for you to have a single set of credentials to all, or at least almost all, of your systems. And this is important because we know that users don't set strong passwords and have trouble remembering them and write them down and reuse passwords and all of these things that we're told not to do. Well, we're told not to do because people do them all the time. And establishing an identity provider can help by reducing the burden on them, as well as giving you a single point of control for these things. So if someone's fired, you can turn off one account and that turns off dozens of other things. The good news is you actually already have an identity provider. Almost everyone here will be hosting their email either on Google or on Office 365. Both of those are identity providers. They're built in. And so that's a tool that you can leverage with your IT team, and then set up SSO with your other apps, and really reduce the burden both in administration and on users, making it a lot easier for them to access stuff without remembering all of these different passwords. To go hand in hand with that, once you have a great identity provider, you can turn on MFA. MFA, multi-factor authentication, is probably the single most helpful thing you can do to reduce data breaches. If when you go log into somewhere, you put in your username and password, and it says, hey, great, can you pull out your phone and give me a code? Well, if someone doesn't have that phone, that makes it really hard. And so MFA is based on 3 categories of information: something you have, something you know, and something you are. So something you have is a card, a phone, something of that nature. Something you know is a password or a PIN, a birth date, your favorite movie, your first pet's name, that kind of questions. And then something you are is a fingerprint or retinal scan, but fingerprint's the one that mostly is in vogue right now. And these aren't new ideas. Your bank has been doing this for a long time, because when you go and buy something, you pull out your card, something you have, and you swipe it, and it says, hey, great, can you put in your PIN, please? Which is something you know. And so you want to have at least 2, if not 3 of these categories for as many logins and transactions as you can. That, again, really protects your data. MFA can reduce cyber attacks by over 90%. So it's not a silver bullet, but it is really, really the most important thing that you can do to reduce inadvertent access to data. So my last point with technology is updates. For your computers, your network devices, your cell phones, the software that you use, you want to be running regular updates. Monthly for the things that update that rapidly. Some things, are less often, and it's going to be once a quarter, or even maybe only once a year. But you want to make sure that the devices and software that you're using are at the latest version. That can prevent a lot of vulnerabilities that exist in those things that can be exploited by bad actors, and is a really low cost thing to do, because it's most of it's automatic as long as you turn it on. So just something to keep in mind if you haven't been running updates, particularly on network devices. I find that that's one that people don't think of a lot. Your computer, Windows and Mac they sort of push it on you now. They don't let you just ignore it. They really try to force you into it. So does your cell phone. But network devices don't. So if you haven't had a look at those recently, it might be time to go take a look and see if there's a newer version, and just put that on your quarterly checklist. So what to ask your EHR? I hope this section is going to be real familiar, because I'm going to tell you all the same things to ask your EHR that I just said that you should do for yourself, because it's the same set of things. So what is their contingency plan? How do they recover? What's the SLA? What's their recovery objectives? What kind of hosting do they use? What kind of 24-hour responses do they have? How do they deal with outages? Those are things that you're going to want to ask. And then with data security, how do they do background checks? Again, on contractors, most importantly. How do they limit access to your data? Are they using encryption? Where do they store their backups? Same set of things for you, apply to them. And then this one's sort of unique to software development, but feature selection. How do they involve security and feature selection? Do they do it right at the beginning? Is that sort of a, hey, we got this thing working and we're about to publish it and someone needs to go look at it? So when in that track that happens is important. Who's responsible for security? Is it just one person? Is it a team? Is it spread across the whole organization? How do they track state and federal compliance? That's, in healthcare, that's really, really important. It's changing pretty rapidly. So you need to have a real defined process for how you deal with that. And are they regularly testing what we call white hat tests? That's a hacker, but one who's out to do good, not to do bad, going against their software and saying, can I get into somewhere that I shouldn't be able to get into? Looking for places to remediate and improve. So these are all questions that I encourage you to ask your EHR provider, and make sure that it's up to your standard. And with that, I think we'll open it up for some questions, Michelle.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. We do have a few questions in the Q&A box, so I'm just going to start at the top of the list. First of all, A. Watt said, hello, Ben. So,
Hi.
The next comment was a question from John Hawkins. He is asking, does Exym solution follow the NIST compliance standards and framework?
Yes, so we don't have a legal requirement to be NIST compliant, but the easiest way to achieve HIPAA compliance is to follow the NIST compliance, because they're built on a similar framework, and so we use that as a guide for how we should implement security policy. And I would assume that hopefully most healthcare providers or EHR providers would, but so we don't do a compliance audit, but we do build against that standard.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is from Marina Eckhart. She's asking, what specific background checks should be done?
So I don't have a great answer to that. I would say talk to your HR department. They should have the answer to that. I just know that that's a requirement, and it's something I've always trusted HR to do. So I'm not involved in the process other than knowing that it's done and that there wasn't any particular bad information on there.
Thank you. Rena Lee is asking, what is the recommended backup for incremental and full schedule?
So that's going to depend a lot on what you're looking at backing up. I will tell you that for my production databases, we do a full backup every night and incrementals every 15 minutes throughout the day, which means that our maximum data loss is 15 minutes. And as technology improves, we keep bringing that number down so that there's less and less potential data loss. And if there was a complete disaster, the data center completely shut down, we went dark sort of issue. But it depends a lot on your data. Your document repository, you might only need to back that one up once a week, because it's not like you're adding thousands and thousands of documents every day.
Awesome, thank you. And we have another question. This is, we have been requested by our cybersecurity provider to further mitigate risk by placing our Exym access behind our RDP server, which is encrypted by VPN and dual factor authentication. Utilizing CIA, parentheses A, would the limitation of our Exym availability, would there be a limitation of our Exym availability, or should we employ full mitigation of risks? What is Exym's recommendation? I hope I read that well.
Yeah, so Exym uses a zero trust model, which is sort of an esoteric security thing. But a zero trust model means even though I know who you are and where you are, I'm going to assume that you're a bad actor and that I shouldn't trust you. And hence, I don't think that being inside your environment is that important for your access, because even if you're in your secure environment that you've MFA'd into, that you've used your dual factor, you've used your MFA to get into, we're still going to treat you like we don't know who you are. We're still going to require that you MFA into our system if you have that turned on. So I would say that where somebody is accessing Exym is less important than you're just paying attention to, who has access and how they're accessing it. Again, making sure that their browsers are up to date, that their computer has antivirus on it and is secure, and that kind of thing. So I think that that's the more important piece than the actual location they're accessing from.
Thanks, Ben. Another question, would you recommend using MFA for each time staff log into Exym?
Yeah, so we have those MFA settings of variable length. I think the minimum is a couple of hours and the maximum is 2 weeks. Every time is probably overkill. What we do is when you log in, we look at, hey, where are you coming from? Have you MFA'd from this location in the past X days or X hours, that number that you as the administrator set? If you have, so you logged in the morning and you MFA'd and you were doing your stuff and you went to lunch, you came back, you had to log in again. Well, you're coming from the exact same location and you've already done that. So at that point, it's pretty safe to say it's still you, it's not somebody else. However, if you pick up that laptop and you go home, or you switch over to your internet goes out, so you switch over to your hotspot, now you're coming from a different location as far as Exym is concerned, we're going to make you do that MFA again. So I don't think there's a number. There's not a right number for everybody. If you have it open all day, you don't have to you don't have to log in as often. You could do a shorter period if you're a person who uses it and then is off doing something else, and then you come back to it. You might want to have a longer, a 12 or 24 hour, 7-day, something like that duration. It just sort of depends on your workspace.
Thanks, Ben. We have 2 more questions and we'll take these. We don't want to keep you guys longer than we promised to have you. So we'll take these 2 questions, but if you have more questions, put them in the Q&A and we will get the answers for those offline and we will get those to you in the follow-up. So John Hopkins is asking, does Exym support Active Directory connection?
If you're referring to your Active Directory connecting to ours, not right now. That's something that we're looking at on the roadmap, but I don't have a date for you of when that might go live. But that is something that we're looking at. I know that that's something that people have been interested in.
And the last question, Ben, is when retiring PCs that were used with PHI, is it safe to wipe and reuse them for other purposes within the agency, or do they need to be securely disposed of?
It's absolutely safe to wipe and reuse them. There are specific guidelines in NIST about how to wipe a drive. So I'd encourage you to talk to your IT provider about that. But it's absolutely safe to reuse those PCs.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much. Guys, we appreciate very much that you spent this time with us. We know that you could have been doing anything else, and we really value that you guys took the time to hang out with us. We had a couple of people ask about MFA and things like that. Yes, we do have MFA for Exym. If that's not activated on your system and you'd like to learn more, you can look in the Exym support portal. There's some articles about it. You can, if you want to get that activated, open a support ticket. As always, you can reach out to us at any time. The easiest way is probably through the support portal. Thank you again so much for spending this time with us. And we hope to see you on our next webinar in April.